Hi, everybody, and welcome to a very special episode of the Rams Review podcast. Today, is an interview day, and the person that we are interviewing is American goalkeeping legend Ian Feuer. Hello, I hope I got your surname right there. I know it's
It's a
something
little,
like that.
it's a weird one. It's Feuer. Yeah, like the
Feuer.
Feuer.
There we
Yeah,
go. Feuer.
like category
Ian Feuer.
watches. Yeah.
Thank you. So Ian, and of course, always joined with Cory. Cory, hello.
Jason, how you doing? Ian, thanks
Yeah.
for taking the time to speak with us. Really appreciate it.
Of course, anytime.
Cool. Obviously, Cory, this one is probably as exciting for you based on an American. It's actually we're just about to start a couple of episodes of podcasting talking about American players in the English game, certainly focusing ourselves on obviously who've been at Derby. I appreciate your time at Derby was pretty short. I certainly remember it. I was trying to think now, probably about 10. I think when you played, so it is a while ago. I do appreciate that,
Yeah.
but I do remember, and I must admit, when me and Cory was discussing this a couple of weeks ago, he didn't actually know you played for Derby, and it was me that plucked your name out. I remember you making your debut at Derby. I remember being there with my uncle,
Okay.
and the one thing that I remember from you was how far you could kick a ball.
Okay.
It was obviously you came in for at the time injured Mark Poom, and I just remember that debut and the first goal kick that you did. It wasn't just off the ground. It wasn't even out your hands, and it was like, oh wow, okay, yeah, you can kick a fair distance. I mean, don't get me wrong. I know most goalkeepers can, but it just you did it with grace and not a lot of effort, and it just seemed to go a fair way down the pitch. And so me and Cory was discussing this last week, and that's our kind of this interview. We said it would be great if we can get in contact with you and reminisce about the little spell that you had at Derby, but obviously the bigger picture of being in England and obviously what you've gone on to do now with the Galaxy and your own coaching and things like that.
Yeah, it was a great time. I mean, Derby has a special place in my heart. I went there on loan and it was just a cool time. Like I was, staying in a hotel and I could relax and just the people were great. It's such a great section of England, it's just a great part of the country and something I'll always cherish, so, I tried to make it a longer spell, but Wimbledon called me back and, then I went back to Wimbledon, but it was a great time.
So, Ian, how does a loan move like that come apart? Obviously, we just get Ian Feuer signed for Derby or X player signed for Derby or the club. So, how does the loan move kind of come about?
Well, I was at Wimbledon. I signed for Wimbledon, and sorry about my dog. The UPS guy came. I signed for Wimbledon, and Kelvin Davis was the goalkeeper at the time. And he was playing out of his skin, he was playing really well. And I was just sitting the bench. So at one point, all of a sudden, my manager called me and he's like, hey, you want to get some games? And I was like, sure, with who? And he goes, Derby County. And I was like, let's do it. And it was interesting because I played against Derby County numerous times with Luton Town. While you guys were in the Premiership, we were in the Championship. And while, I think I played against Derby like 4 or 5 times. And for some reason, every time I played against Derby, I had a blinder. Like it's just something about, I was like, yes, we've signed, get FA Cup draw against Derby. And I was like, yes, there's other teams I didn't, like for instance, Grimsby Town. I mean, I just had shockers every time I played up there. So anyways, so when they said Derby County, I was just, and then I knew some of the players, not personally, but just the names, the Ravanellis, Carboni, and, Danny Higginbottom. So I was excited, and the crazy thing was it was on a Sunday I got the phone call, I think. And on Monday night, we're at Spurs live on TV.
Yeah, I remember it being live on TV. I knew it was pretty quick because I think if memory serves me right, we'd got Mark Poom in, and I think we'd actually brought another goalkeeper in who was injured at the same time.
Yeah,
I can't remember who it was at this moment in time.
I forget. Yeah, and so I got on the pitch at Spurs. I didn't even know half the players' names. You know what I mean? It was interesting, and it was just such a personally, it was fulfilling because it shows, what you can do. Like, I'm sitting there going, oh my God, I got to play live on TV at Spurs. I don't know the players' names. And, what after, the warm up, I mean, you get into it and you just realize you're capable of doing a lot more than you can, so it was a good time.
And also, obviously, you were saying about playing against Derby. I mentioned something to Cory just before we came on here. I believe you made your debut for West Ham against Derby as well.
I did, yes, I did. Yeah. Similar situation. We had an injury with Shaka Hislop and Craig Forrest. I was on my second spell at West Ham.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was at Derby, and we won 2-1. I think One Chop scored both goals. And oh God, who scored for Derby? I can't remember. But yeah, it was an exciting game. Thought it was a good game, and again, just one of those clubs that I always played well with or against.
So what impressed you most when they said, Derby can give you games? What was the automatic draw other than playing games to bring you to the Midlands?
Just playing in the Premiership, that's the goal. That's the epitome of to me, football around the world. I mean, if you can play in the Premiership, you can almost play anywhere. Just because of the conditions, the fanaticism. Every team has culture. I mean, you could go all the way down to the second and third divisions. There's teams that have fans, the culture. I mean, they're nonstop. So it's to me, it's just an honor, really. It's an honor. So once I got the opportunity to play, I'm not going to pass that one up.
So what was it like for you? Also, I'm curious because of obviously being American. You're one of the first Americans to play in the Premier League, and obviously
first, yeah. Or not to play, to sign, yeah, to sign,
yeah. And America's got a really long history of goalkeepers that have done well at those levels. So, what was it like for you being an American? Did you find any? Oh man, it's a yank coming abroad. Why aren't you playing NFL or football or something? What are you coming in here with these soccer terms for and things like that?
Yeah, it was definitely like that. For my first experience in Europe, I went to Belgium at 16. And I signed pro at 17 for FC Bruges. So at 16, I signed for the youth academy. And then at 17, I moved up to the first team, third keeper of the first team. I signed pro at 17. And it was tough because there weren't the Tim Howards and Casey Keller and Friedel and all these guys that went before that, it was me. And I'm over there and they're like, what are you doing? This is our sport, It was a very difficult transition. So I had to be pretty thick-skinned, and I had to keep. I remember one day in training, I was only 17. I was at Bruges, and the manager says, next goal wins in a small-sided game. So cross comes from I'm at my near post. Cross comes all the way to the far post. I get set, and the guy roofs it near post from like 6 yards away, and the game's over. And and as I'm walking back to the locker room, the dressing room. One of the senior players pulls me. And remember, I'm 17 in a foreign country, don't know the language, just, and pulls me aside. And in his best English, he goes, what are you doing here? And I kind of look at him dumbfounded. I was like, what do you mean? He goes, you're useless. He goes, you need to go back home, go play basketball, play football, play your stupid sports. This is our sport. He goes, you should just get on the next flight home, and just walked off. And that was my first. I was maybe a week into being a professional, and, I went around the corner and, bawled my eyes out for a second. And then, I went against, I got a ball that day. I got a ball and I kicked against a wall for about 2 hours maybe, and decided you got two options. You can cry and go home, or you can, show this guy and the rest of, the world that Americans can do it, So that's what I did. And what's interesting is the guy that told me that his dream was to play in the Premiership, in England. At that time, there was no Premiership, obviously, because I think it started in 93 or 94. But his dream was to play in England, one of the big teams. And I did see him, after I had my first spell with West Ham, and it was nice. We had a little chat, So I achieved my dream, which was to play in England. He didn't, not to be mean or nothing, but it was fulfilling.
Do you think that kind of not necessarily the biggest turning point in your career, but do you think that conversation kind of made you want to spur people on and prove them wrong and I belong here kind of thing, and that gave you the extra motivation to work the little bit extra longer, to put the extra hard yards in to get to that level?
100%. I think also growing up, I mean, I was always, I would be in school and, you'd have these baseball players and they're like, oh, soccer sucks and da-da-da-da-da, And I'm like, well, then why is it the biggest sport in the world? And they're like, no, it's not. I go, yeah, it is. You're thinking only America. I go, you call it the World Series and it's only America and Canada. So, so I was always debating with my buddies that played baseball about this. So once this happened, it just spurred all those emotions from my youth growing up. And this guy telling me that Americans can't. And I was like, oh, yeah, we can. So, yeah, it definitely spurred me on and it made me work a little bit harder. Not that I didn't work hard before, but it definitely gave me a little bit more incentive and bite.
Obviously, probably the I don't want to overage you, Ian, but I would have thought somewhere in the late 80s is sort of when you was just starting your career. Obviously read that you're actually from Vegas. And still, it's a place that I visited 4 or 5 times. I love the place. Still, they don't have a soccer team. Don't know why.
I think they would never lose a home game. It's like just every team would come in and go out till like 5 a.m, and then it's actually a good thing to do.
I mean, I know it's not quite football related, but I went last year when obviously their ice hockey, the Knights or basketball, whichever one it is, have just started, and they made the playoffs, and I was there when it was happening, and wow, it was incredible.
I might have missed you by a couple of days because I was there too. Yeah.
Right, cool. Just to talk a little bit, obviously coming from back in, as I say, the late 80s. American soccer over there is probably not at its highest. How does a young player like yourself from Vegas get picked up? And how did soccer come about as an interest of your own?
It's weird because growing up, soccer was non-existent. From age birth till up until maybe I was 20. It was almost non-existent. But I grew up in Vegas. There was a local team that was looking for some players. And I just decided, I just want to play a sport. My dad's a famous, musician. My whole family's on the music and acting side. So I thought, I'm, the youngest of 6. I wanted to do something different, be my own person. So I decided to play some sports, and I started playing soccer. I was on the pitch for a little bit until I became like Bambi on ice. I was just too tall. And I went in goal. And I hated running, so it worked out perfect. I didn't mind getting kicked in the face. So, that worked out perfect. So I went in goal and, I just started winging it. And there was really no proper training then and this and that. So at age 12, my team decided to do a tour of Europe. And we went to Belgium, Germany, and Holland. And we stayed with some host families. So when I was 15, 16, and I wanted to move to Europe and try my luck being a professional, I called up the host family, said, can I stay with you for a little bit? They said, sure. So I go there and I just started knocking on some doors. And one of the people I was living with, their friend knew someone at FC Bruges, like the youth manager and stuff. And he says, you want me to put a phone call in? We can maybe get you a trial. I was like, sure. So we went there. I trained for an hour. After that, they said, we'll give you a 1-year deal on our 16 and under team as the third keeper. You're not going to play. We just want to see how you grow in a year. And we'll go from there. I went, played that year, didn't play at all, just trained, just worked my ass off every day. And at the end of that season, there was a few injuries to keepers, and the under 23 team needed a goalkeeper to play in this tournament in France. So I was the only one left, and I went there and just had a blinder. I played about 4 games against Glasgow Rangers, PSG, Bayern Munich or something, and I came home, and the first team manager called me in, and he signed me pro at 17. So, yeah, I mean, it was just such a wing and a prayer, and a lot of things happened. I was very fortunate, but a lot of it was just from, the hard work and determination and never giving up that I did. And, like I said, we didn't at that time have a pro league here. So I had to make my own move and make my own path,
Yeah. Obviously, looking through your your career appearances and where you've been, there has been a lot of clubs, and there's obviously been phases where you've come to England, gone back to America, come back to England. I'd start at the beginning, really. I mean, West Ham, getting picked up by West Ham. How did that come about?
Well, I was in Belgium. Excuse me. I was in Belgium, and they kind of saw me playing. I played for. I was at Bruges. Then I went on loan where I played most of my games to RWD Molenbeek, and I played most of my games there. So that's where I think they first initially saw me. And then they asked me to come over for a trial, and I went over. Harry Redknapp signed me, and then I was the backup with Ludo McCloskey, who was just – that guy was insane. I mean, he never got injured. He never – so that was my first spell. Then I got injured. I broke my hand at West Ham. Coming back off injury, Redknapp wanted to get me some games, so he put me out to Peterborough. Most of my teams were on loan. So Peterborough I went to, played about 30 games there. Funny enough, I was tied for first place for Player of the Year there after 3 months, which was kind of a nice feather in the cap. Then I came back, got injured again, broke my hand again, and again on injury, Redknapp put me out on loan to Luton Town, and that's where I went on loan to Luton Town, in the Championship, and eventually signed for Luton Town.
Yeah, I saw obviously the majority of your appearances, certainly in this country, have been at Luton. That was a couple of years spell there. I've had the privilege of going to Kenilworth Road on a couple of occasions as an away fan. Intimidating place, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
But I suppose at the time, say the Championship level, League One level, it's still pretty competitive, as Derby are finding out currently. Having, I think it's 11, 12 straight seasons there now. It's not the easiest league to get out of in the world. It's still pretty. It is still pretty competitive at this level. And of course, games, week in week, playing week in week out, when off the back of two hand injuries like you've just mentioned there, it must have felt like a bit of a reset button, I suppose, in some respects, that you could hopefully finally start proving, I wouldn't say the doubters, but start proving your worth why you was brought over to this country in the first place.
Yeah, and I think that was part of the reason I chose, because Redknapp gave me the choice. And he said, look, I'm happy for you to stay here. You're going to be fighting for a spot, or you can go, we can sell you to Luton and you can start playing. And I had the taste of playing, and and I like I said, I wasn't playing at West Ham in the beginning, so I got that feeling of playing, and I grew this love with the fans, and I was like, look, I just want to play. I want to play. So I signed for Luton. I played a lot of games there. I can't remember how many, but it was a lot. And it was a great time for me at Luton Town. I mean, I still to this day have an amazing rapport with all the fans. It was a good time.
So Ian, talk us through the move from Luton to MLS, and I was around MLS a lot as a youngster, and whatever, and having read a lot of things, MLS wasn't necessarily what they put in the press, with the lack of funds and how close a lot of these teams were on the line. So talk to us about the move back to MLS, and then what it was like for you in the early days of the league, when they had penalty kick shootouts and crazy rules and shoestring budgets and things like that.
It was tough. I came back from playing Premiership and Championship, and then I came back to the MLS. And it's not disrespecting the MLS, but at that time, it just wasn't, I guess, what's the word, fulfilling enough for me. It was tough, and it was just strange, the travel and the whole. It was just a different time. I mean, now we've come just such a long way. It's awesome, but at that time, I joined, and immediately I just knew I made the wrong decision, and I wanted to get back to Europe, and that's why my spell in MLS was pretty short. I was with New England for a season, and I was just like, you know what, I might want to try to get back there, and that's when I tried to get back, and I eventually landed back up at West Ham and a couple other teams, you know.
So you're back at West Ham. You know, you've tasted MLS, but you're back in England, kind of where you want to be. What was it like for you to make your debut in the Premier League for them? I mean, that's a lifelong aspiration of yours. So what was that feeling when you come in and you see your name on the team sheet?
Yeah. Well, I played a bunch of cup games for West Ham, which doesn't get, you know, on the statistics, it doesn't show. But I played a bunch of games there, so I've already played with West Ham and that. But the tag Premiership debut was special. It was just, you know, and I would just remember, you know, talking to my buddies and this and that, and they're all excited and you know, stepping on the pitch. It was at Derby, you know, stepping on the pitch for the warm up. I mean, I could still remember it as it's today, you know, as it was yesterday. So to think back as a kid growing up in Vegas, to have played one game in the Premiership was just fulfilled, like dream come true. So to have done multiple games and, you know, especially with Luton and, you know, West Ham and that, it's just, there's no words that can describe it. And to have that feather in your cap and say, yeah, I have played in the Premiership, one of the toughest leagues in the world, one of the best leagues in the world, is something that I'll never, ever take for granted. You know. Who
would you say the toughest opponent that you would have faced in the Premier League was during your time?
Opponent as a team or player?
Player.
I played against Chelsea one time, and Zola was pretty special. I mean, the West Ham team, every day in training, we had a pretty good team. We had DeCanio, Paulo Wanchope, Joe Cole. I mean, all these, Frank Lampard, Rio Ferdinand. That was a pretty good team. And if West Ham could have held on to that could have been something special, you know. But God, they're all good, man. I mean, if you're in the Premiership, you know. I mean, I
Small
remember
margins.
I played an FA Cup game against Leeds, and Hasselbank hit a shot on me, and he had no run up. He took a step and hit it, and he was about 22 yards. I think it was so fast, it hit the backboards, came back out, and then I dove. I mean, it was just like this, just blur. I mean, he hit it probably like 90 miles an hour from no run up. And, you know, so every player in the Premiership, you got to be alive, and they're special. You know what I mean? But I would say Zola was that on that day that I played against Chelsea was he was pretty cool. He was pretty cool.
So walk me through you getting the call to represent the USA. I mean, obviously you've played in the Premier League. You've done all these things that you wanted to do. What's it like to pull on the jersey for your country?
That's another thing. That's the epitome of everything. That's, you know, you're the best of the best, you know, and it was man, it was nice. I remember, you know, I got to the hotel, they gave us our kit, and I just went to my room and just put it on the bed, you know, like I did when I was with West Ham and Luton and all that. And it's just, you put it on the bed, you just look at it, you know, and you just kind of go, wow, you know, and then you realize how many people that want to do that and didn't get the opportunity, you know, not through lack of, let's say, skill or anything. It's just there's a lot of luck involved. There's a lot of timing involved. I was a little, I think, unfortunate on the national team side because I had two amazing goalkeepers in front of me. I had Keller and Friedel. I mean, how do you knock on the door of the manager and go, hey, you got to play me? It's not that I didn't feel wasn't as good, or if, you know, I felt I was. When we were in training, it was like, man, we got three good keepers here. The difference is they're there and they kind of went through the system youth, you know, so they were already in the system, not saying that that's the only reason. The main reason is they're amazing, but, you know, so they had that little one up on me, but they were good. You know, we have good goalkeepers, you know, so it was more just, all right, I'm sitting the bench behind these guys. So, but it was okay because they were so good. It would have been worse if they were like terrible and I'm sitting there going like, hey, why aren't you playing me? You know, but they were very good goalkeepers. So it was a fun time. But to put on the is that George? George is saying hi, my dog.
How you doing, George?
Crazy. Yeah.
To be honest with you, one of the things I was talking to Cory with just before we came on, I mean, I would say, obviously knowing the English game pretty well, I'd say pretty much every club that you went to, you'd always got another goalkeeper playing alongside you. And as I say, not to knock your commitment or ability, but you were up against some real talent in some of the sides that you went to. Like you say, you mentioned West Ham with Shaka Hislop, one of the best goalkeepers from the mid-90s that I can remember, certainly. And wherever obviously you ever went, there was always good competition. And like you say, especially with the national team, trying to get over certainly Keller and then Friedel. I mean, look at the career that those two had.
Yeah, and I think that's when because sometimes people are like, oh, you didn't play many games at West Ham, and I'm like, but look at the situation I was in, So I could have gone to a team where I would have started for sure, but I wanted to test myself, and it was tough at times because I'm sitting there, and week in, week out in training, I'm doing amazing, and this, and on the weekend, then you sit on the bench, or you get a couple games here and there, and then, what one of the things that most people don't know was, my first year at West Ham, sat the bench. Then at the end of that year, I went on a tour of Australia with West Ham, and played all the games because McCluskey had to go back home somewhere in Russia, if you guys know that chant.
Yeah.
He's near Russia, somewhere near Russia. And so anyways, I played all the games, did amazing. I come back for preseason, and Redknapp pulls me in, and he goes, I love what you did in Australia. And we were playing against big teams. We were playing against the national teams and all, And he goes, I really want you to push McCluskey this year. I'm going to get you some games. You're going to be playing, cup game, all this stuff. That day, we go out to training, and I broke my wrist on a silly collision with one of my defenders that didn't get out of the way. Broke my wrist, so I'm out for 4 months. I come back, and that's when I went on loan to Peterborough. Did amazing at Peterborough. Come back, Redknapp saying the same thing. Got injured again, and then it was like, okay, we go to Luton. So without that hand injury, I'm thinking I might have been able to get a couple games in there. So, but again, it's no, we're not crying over spilled milk here, but it was tough because, like you said, even at Derby, I mean, you got Poom. Come on, the guy's amazing.
He is still to this day probably the one goalkeeper all fans can remember and will say is the best of all time, other than Shilton, I would say.
And a great guy. So, I had that, and Shaka, and so it was a series of I don't want to say bad timing, but like, man, put it this way, if I was in the national team 5 years later, when Friedel and Keller maybe were retired, I'd have Tim Howard to deal with. So he's another great keeper, but you see what I'm getting at. So God damn, why do we
it's about the one position that American soccer's really deep at.
Oh yeah.
If you look at that with Keller and Friedel and Raimondo and Howard and
Raimondo's
and there's always good American keepers, which is unfortunate for you.
Exactly.
It was also a compliment because to be mentioned with those names is pretty special.
Oh, I mean, again, it's an honor to be mentioned with those names, and I know, having talked to some of those guys personally, and they're, Friedel and I, we were in the Olympics together in '92. Having talked to those guys, they did mention, I was a major influence of them, doing what they did, and going over there, and they were like, wait, he can do it. Oh, okay, let me go over there, So I'm proud to have been kind of a pioneer on goalkeeper side of things for Americans going over there. And that's something that kind of replaces the lack of, let's say, starts with the national team, Again, I was mostly on the bench with the national team. So, but yeah. It was
Did you think when you were over there that, you used the term pioneer, did you think you were a pioneer when you were over there at the time? Like when you were sitting at your house or your hotel room at night, did you go, I'm paving the way here for future Americans? Or was it just kind of, I'm just doing my thing, and if they come, they come, and didn't really give it much thought?
I think I did because I remember what really got me going was I was about 15, 14, and I was reading Soccer America, and I read this article about Paul Caligiuri, and he signed for Hamburg, and he was the first American to sign. Again, I don't know if we're going way back and some guy did it back in the day that we don't know about, but as far as I know, he was the first American player to sign pro in Europe, And then I went over, and I was like the first American goalkeeper, I think, when I signed for FC Bruges at 17, and I think it was 1986. So when I saw him, I was like, oh, wait, there's Americans playing in Europe? And then it just like, it just switched my brain to, okay, let me do this. Let me do this. So, yeah, when I went over there, I was like, I'm also representing America. And I got to kind of go that extra mile just to show that we're capable of doing this,
So obviously, not long really, I suppose, after your time at Derby, your career started to wind down. You hung up the gloves, as it were. What made you come to that decision? Was it? I must admit, I haven't read about the age that you retired, so I don't know if this was an age thing or what was the factor behind it.
I was out of contract, and I was going on a couple trials and this and that. I went to Wolves, and again, it was kind of a little bit of bad timing again, where they were going with a young kid, and they wanted me as a backup, and I was 35, I think, at the time, and they wanted. I was like, look, I appreciate you going with a young kid. I think that's great. I mean, he's amazing. He looks good, whatever. But I go, I want to play. So, that didn't work out. And then I went to my final part was I went to Arsenal, and I was there. Arsene Wenger called me. He's like, hey, can you come out to training? We just want to see you for one day. I was like, okay. And this is that, really good Patrick Vieira, Thierry Henry team, Dennis Bergkamp, all these guys. I'm like, cool. This is, get there. After the first day of training, Arsene Wenger goes, hey, can you stay for a few more days? I'm like, sure, I'm here. So that turned into about a month. And they were looking for a backup for David Seaman. And so I kept training. And I remember I played a reserve game and played really well. And the next day in the press, there was a whole quote from I think the assistant manager was Rice. Pat Rice?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Quote from him, we're going to hand Ian Feuer a 1-year deal. And I was like, wow, okay. Dream come true, Arsenal, whatever. And about 2 hours later, they signed this guy, Remy Shaban. And I can't remember, from Egypt, I think it was. And I know there was a little bit of political something because I had a little feud with an ex-agent at that time, and there was a little something, and I kind of just, at that point, I was just worn out, and I thought, you know what, I've done everything I wanted to. I played in the Olympics, played for my national team, played in the Premiership, played in the Championship. Let me just hang up the boots, and that's when I decided to do it, and came home and started my coaching career, and something that was pretty awesome.
So, to that point with your coaching career is you signed with the Galaxy at a very interesting time. Being here, obviously, for me and being around the MLS at that time, because David Beckham joined not long after you became the goalkeeper coach at LA Galaxy. So what was it like, obviously going into that setup, and what was it like? Obviously, one of the biggest footballing stars, I would think at the time, if not the biggest, is joining your club that you're the coach at.
It was a great time, and people will never understand and appreciate. Well, they will, but it's beyond. He's done more for this league than any single person, period. And I witnessed every single moment of it. And most of it was off the field. And that's not to take away him on the field, but off the field, what that guy did for this league, wherever he traveled, wherever we went, he signed autographs, he did interviews, he represented, he was friendly, he was respectful, he promoted the league, and to this day, he has done more than any player that's played in the MLS, period, on a building the MLS scale. And just I can't say enough good words about him. Worked his ass off in training, trained hard, brought all the players up, in training, demanded more from them. And it was a great special time to be part of the Galaxy. We won 2 championships while I was there, got to the finals 2 other times, so it was a good time, and that guy, I'll just have nothing but respect for him. And it was cool because he knew me from my time at West Ham in England. And so we had a little bit of banter. And, we knew the same people. I know Rio. He knows Rio Ferdinand, Frank Lampard, Joe Cole, all these guys. So we knew kind of a lot of the same people. So we got along really well. And yeah, he was amazing.
What was the difference between when you left the league, with the Revolution, you came back, and then you were with Colorado, and then you went back to Europe? What was the growth of the league like from then to the point when Beckham came, and then since past Beckham's arrival as well? How much did that league grow? Was it unrecognizable?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you're talking when I was there, we're playing in football stadiums and practicing at a high school. And now you have training facilities and stadiums built for your team. And there was no comparison. And listen, I get it. I mean, you got to start somewhere, and we started in 94, the league. And you can't expect it to be the Premier League by 1996. So it's a growth process. And I just was caught up in that 1990, late 90s era of MLS. And I tried it out, and it wasn't what but if I were to come back now, it'd be a different ballgame. You know what I mean? So it's grown exponentially. And from that point till now, I mean, it's even, doubled again. I mean, you got LAFC, you got Atlanta. I mean, there's crowds that you just never thought were going to happen. And they're week in, week out. And it's pretty cool to see.
And I mean, you're starting to see now, like, I know from here, reading the media, kind of MLS kind of had that retirement home like the NASL did. We're sending Beckham, we're sending David Villa, we're sending Pirlo over here to kind of retire and get out of the way of Europe. But now you're seeing that the players who come out of MLS, Almiron, Newcastle for $25 million. And, there's players like that making the transition over, that MLS is kind of this breeding ground for maybe not necessarily recognized talent that is given the stage that they can perform at the higher levels.
Yeah. Some people give MLS a lot of, a hard time because it's single entity and, but it is probably the smartest way to have built this league, because otherwise we would have had another NASL where it's just everybody's spending and all of a sudden they're bankrupt. So you have to start somewhere. So if you look at the beginning part of the league, you had these guys coming over from more like Latin countries, amazing players, but really worldwide, not that well known. You know what I mean? Like an Echeverry, amazing player. Worldwide, okay. But he did well for the league at that time. He was the David Beckham of the league that time. Amazing. So he took it to that level. Then you had, the next phase, the David Beckhams and that. So, David was 33 at the time or whatever he was. I can't remember, but we're slowly getting to the point now where those famous players are getting a little younger, and that's the transition. So at one point, I think maybe 10 years from now, we're going to be competing, hopefully, with, some of the top leagues. Maybe not the Premiership, because the money's insane, but we're going to be competing with some of those, and we might get a 25-year-old, World Cup star that is world known and will bring fans into the seats like a David Beckham did. You know what I mean? So I think we're on to great things. And I think at some point, 20, 30 years down the line, we could go to a single entity, individually owned club instead of a single entity league. But right now, I think it's the best thing for just keeping the parity and keeping it somewhat stable, and like I said, we're you look at some of the leagues around the world, they're 100 years old, and we're 20 years old, so 1994. I
mean, one thing I would say, obviously, as looking in from a different country, but
yeah.
you see the growth in all the different teams that have started up in the last 5-10 years, and obviously plans to do more. There's obviously more of an appeal there now. There is definitely more of a fan base there. I mean, from over in this country, I mean, you see the Portland Timbers, you see the fans that they, the atmospheres that you get. I mean, I've been actually lucky enough to go to the Depot Centre to see the Galaxy, and I was blown away with it. It was one of the things, I think it was 2010 when I first came over to Vegas, and decided to have a bit of a trip out to Los Angeles and see some sights. And I said, look, I'd love to go and see, because I'd heard of the MLS.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the first real memories I have of football was the World Cup in '94.
Yeah.
I'd have been about 8 or 9 back then. And so it was like, oh, you'd start to hear a little bit more about it. And it was just to see kind of what it was. And I've been back since. I went 2 years ago, and the difference in the 6 or 7 years was incredible. But I remember going to see the Galaxy in 2010, and even then it was 45,000, capacity and things like that. And then when I went back in 2018, it was even just the quality. And obviously, like you say, it's bringing in the players, and I'm sure the coaches are coming over from Europe now as well. And it's a bit more of a multicultural thing over there now. And it can only benefit, in my opinion, it can only benefit you.
Well, the difference is football is, how can I explain it? It's a pub culture, okay? You go to the pub, you meet your boys, you go to the game, you have a laugh, you have some banter, you shout, you do your thing. After the game, go have a beer, whatever, right? It's not a tailgate sport. In the beginning of MLS, it was a tailgate sport, okay? So all these stadiums, they were in football stadiums in the middle of nowhere, okay? They're in the middle of nowhere. You can't go and just have a beer and then walk or take a small, Uber ride. What the MLS is realizing is they're building now stadiums closer to the downtowns. Yeah. LAFC just opened up overnight. It's packed. You can't get a seat.
That stadium's beautiful as well.
Oh, it's amazing. I used to live downtown, like half a mile from it. It's amazing what they've done there. So what's nice is you look at the teams that do really well with their crowds, and most of them, not all, but most of them have a common thread is they're close to the downtown. So what people are doing is there's people that want to watch football. I played with the Galaxy. Coached. We were at the Galaxy. We played against Barcelona at the Rose Bowl. We broke the record. It was 110,000 people there for a friendly game. Okay, so there's people that want to watch football. The problem is not the problem. The good thing is they want to watch good football. So when we can get good football on the pitch, they're going to be there. Okay, so they're just waiting for it. So what's nice is you now have a lot of stadiums where you can go get a beer at a pub. LAFC, you can be downtown LA at a bar, meet up with your boys and take a 2-minute Uber ride or even walk if you needed to. And that's the difference. So we're realizing football is not an American tailgating, clap, yay, good. No, it's a pub culture. It's rowdy. It's, I don't want to say aggressive, but there's moments where it's aggressive, and that's where we're slowly figuring this out. And it's attracting a lot of people to come that have never watched soccer. They go to an LAFC game. They go to like a Galaxy LAFC. You go to one of those. I mean, it's intense, and we're getting rivalries going, and it's great. I love it.
I think to that point, Ian, I mean, obviously when you look at a stadium like Derby's, and it always struck me when I went around England a few years ago, just looking at different football grounds. Yeah. And there's never any parking. There's no parking lots.
Right.
And, I used to spend a lot of time at DC United, and RFK is surrounded by parking lots. But now when you look at, like you say, LAFC, there's no parking around there. When you go to Audi Field in DC, there's no parking. And they told you there's no parking. And if you want to come, you take the subway, you take the metro, and you walk. And then all those areas are now lined, like you say, with bars and things like that. So I know for me, you're obviously in it every day, but looking as a fan from afar, you can see the growth in it. And I think it's fantastic. The stadium designs are insane, and you can see the ones that the stadiums, the teams that don't have the soccer specific stadiums, so to say, like New England Revolution, they're starting to be left behind because the league's evolving into like this MLS 3.0 kind of thing. Obviously, Atlanta's a little different because it shares the Mercedes-Benz Arena, which is an amazing venue. But you can see this. There's no parking lots with them anymore, so you can't have the tailgate. You have to walk up, like you say, with your boys and get a beer and things like that. And they're trying to make them a little bit more European specific to foster that as well. And I think that's fantastic for the growth of the game in this country.
Well, what's interesting is, like you said, stadiums are very specific to sport. So football stadiums, they're football stadiums. That sport is completely different. Football, real football, like we're talking about, it's intimate. So go back to the Rose Bowl. We played against Barcelona, 120,000 people there. it felt like you're playing in front of 5 people. The atmosphere, because it's a bowl. It's like this. What I love is the Luton Towns right on top of you, LAFC right on top of you. Those, to me, I'd rather play. The more intimidating grounds for me were, Bristol City, freaking Grimsby Town, like all these little stadiums right on top of you. And that's what I think is the change too, is the stadiums now are getting, they're compact, they're on you, they're right, besides Atlanta, obviously. But, and I think that's a major plus too. And we can always build out later if we have to. But right now, I think a 20 to 30,000, that's where we're at. It's like perfect, and make it right on top, make it exciting. And this is what I hate about West Ham was we had an amazing Upton Park was just a fortress. It's great atmosphere. And now we moved to the Olympic Stadium, and yeah, it's beautiful and big and whatever. But you're 50 yards from the pitch.
Yeah, and I must admit, just based on that West Ham thing, I've got some family who are down there who are big Hammers fans. Yeah. They tore up their season tickets when they moved to the Olympic Stadium because it has just got no atmosphere. I mean, I know I've been to Upton Park. I was there not long before actually it closed. And they just do not want to be there. They do not want to be at the Olympic Stadium at all.
That was a big, to me in my mind. That was it's a shame.
Yeah, I've been to the Olympic Stadium, and it is a fantastic stadium,
sure.
and absolutely fantastic facilities and things like that. It's like I've been to the new Tottenham ground, the new White Hart Lane, and that is it's out of this world, to be perfectly honest with you. But in terms of football, because obviously, like you say, a lot of these football clubs in our country are 70, 80, 90 years old. A lot of the stadiums are 60, 70, 80 years old, whereas obviously MLS have started from late 90s, mid 2000s. They can build these types of stadiums that are right at the peak of technology in some respects. I mean, I know just moving it slightly away from football. I may be completely wrong when I'm about to say this, but they're building something new in LA, aren't they? A new venue.
Yep.
In Inglewood.
Yeah. And I've been to Inglewood, and I know that's a nice area. So it's just the capacity that they can build, and obviously a couple of the new what was it last year? Some of the new football, obviously the NFL stadiums that they're building. I'm a big follower of wrestling. Obviously.
Have you seen the Raiders in Vegas? The Raiders?
Yes, yes, I have. Yeah,
it's like a spaceship. It's unbelievable.
And obviously, I've been to. I'm not quite sure what it's called now, but when I was in Vegas, it was called the T-Mobile Arena. I don't know if it's. It's probably changed its name now. But yeah, some of these, obviously, the newer venues that certainly the wrestling are going to in and around the country, they are purpose built for spectators now, that for the 60, 70, 80,000. And with you saying there, I don't think it'll be long before some of the MLS do start getting these capacities built up. As I say, when I first went to the Depot Centre back in 2010, it was I couldn't believe actually how big it was. I knew the Galaxy were big in the MLS. I didn't quite realise how big it actually was, and it's. I don't know if it still is. Obviously, at the time they had the tennis facilities there as well. I don't know. That's changed. But I was very impressed with the place. I just remember it taking a while to get there, if memory serves me right, from, as you say, from City Centre.
Yeah, it's a little far out. Yeah.
I think also what you see in the game as well, Ian, I think when I was a kid growing up, obviously I've grown up around football my entire life. My dad played professionally in England and everything, so it's always been in my consciousness. But when you get the papers, you'd see an article on soccer and you'd read it 4 or 5 times because it's the one thing. And now it's just normally in all the national papers and local papers, not obviously like they are for you, Jason, in England, but the growth is really good for the game. And
think about on TV too. I mean, it's just every day. Well, not now, but every day.
So talk us through what you're doing now with your transition to your own company.
Well, I've worked. I was with the Galaxy for 10 seasons. I was coaching on and off with the national team. I coached Tim Howard a bunch of times, which was nice. And Hope Solo on the women's side. Got my own academy, Premier Goalkeeping Academy. So most of what I'm doing is, doing some scouting for the national team, and then most of what I'm doing is with my own keepers, my academy keepers, and just building that up to a pretty amazing the assembly line I got going with my keepers is pretty cool. I mean, there's some keepers that are coming through that are going to be really good, including my son, who's fingers crossed going to get he was born in England. He's got his passport, he's 6'4" or whatever. So he's got all the tools and hopefully he can get over there as well.
Well, we'll send you the map to Moore Farm so he can end up there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Second Feuer at the Rams.
That would be awesome.
Which it leads me into the next point that me and Jason kind of wanted to pick your brains about a bit, because you're coaching and you're scouting now. What are your thoughts on a keeping position today? Because obviously we were in the playoff final last year. We had a goalkeeping clanger, for the lack of a better term, that kind of not necessarily cost us promotion, but didn't help in the first.
Who was in goal for that?
Keller Roos.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and we've had Scott Carson, we've loaned him out, and the kind of the goalkeeping position has been kind of in flux now, really, without a real solid number one for 4 or 5 seasons. So what do you make of the two current keepers, Ben Hamer and Keller Roos, and what do you think, not necessarily what they could do better, but what Derby should be looking for in a goalkeeper in the future?
I'll be honest, it's hard to see some of those games because, all we usually get is the Premiership. So I'll have to, go off a little bit of – I've only seen little clips here and there. I know Kel Roos via the glove company he uses, and it's a buddy of mine who owns it. But, it's a tough situation because when you get in those moments where you're switching back and forth, and you kind of, don't have a really established number one, even though I know Kel played, I think, am I wrong? He played most of the games?
Yeah.
Most of the games last season and most of them this season.
Right. So, it becomes a difficult thing. And I think that the importance of just having a steady goalkeeper that, you can kind of rely on, it's super important. And again, I can't even speak to the two keepers because I haven't seen much of them, so I'm not putting them down or whatever. I'm just saying. So I think as a club, you gotta find a way to get both of them on board, competing, pushing for the first team spot, but also finding where their confidence is lacking and try to address it from that angle because they're both great goalkeepers, obviously, and we got to just get them fired on the mental side and get them back to where we know that they can make a difference in the team.
Mentally, funny you mentioned that. How did you respond when you had a bad game or you made a mistake that led to a goal? What was your mental way to try to get over that, to get back on the positive aspects of it, and to continue to build your confidence rather than knock it down?
Well, something I learned later in my career was balance. There's times where you got to train harder, and then there's times where you got to take a step back. And usually when you're going through a rough patch, especially as a keeper, it can be mentally draining. And, because you're sitting there for 90 minutes, you usually don't have too much to do, but you're so focused because when you do have that thing to do, it has to be perfect. So you're mentally so focused. Physically, not too bad, but mentally it's draining. So what happens is when you get mental fatigue, that's when the silly mistakes happen. So the initial reaction is usually to go out, train harder, longer, go more reps, this and that. And what I've found over the years is sometimes you got to reverse it and do less. And you got to literally do the bare minimum in training, go home, put your feet up. I was going to say go to the pool, but there's not many pools in England because it's always raining. But,
no, that's true.
Go to the beach. Yeah, okay. So you got to almost do less. And I remember when I was coaching at Galaxy, I had a young keeper, and he just went through a patch. And I saw him. He was every day. He was getting in early. He was doing his weights. He was doing all this stuff. He would train. He would do the extra shooting at the end. And there was a couple of weeks he couldn't even catch a cold, man. So I told him, I go, look, do not come in till 9:30, which was the latest you could come in for training without getting fined. Do the bare minimum training. When training's done, don't do the extra shooting at the end. Get home. And he lived near the beach. I said, go to the beach, put your feet in the sand, get up, right? I go, until I tell you you can do otherwise. And we did this for about a week. And I said, okay. And then in training, I saw him starting to come back to what I knew he could do. And all of a sudden I said, all right, go back to your normal routine. And he goes, how did you know? And I go, because I've been there. I've done it. I've trained, and all of a sudden your initial reaction is do harder, more, and you just become more mentally fatigued. So it doesn't feel like it, but when you're mentally fatigued, it's worse than physical fatigue. So when that happens, you got to just take a step back, readdress it, get your brain right, because it is a mental position, And if, again, without having really seen these two play, I would probably take that angle first, because I've heard a lot of things. They're both pretty good goalkeepers, so I think it's in there, and I think you just got to pull out that mental side and the confidence. So that's where I would start.
I think one of my final questions for you, Ian, so we can let you go and carry on with your day. Obviously, as you say, you've got your own school. We're seeing, certainly in the Premier League and across Europe, that the change in goalkeepers aren't just there to stand in between the sticks anymore. They are part of the build-up play now. Is that something that you bring into your coaching sessions, or or does it depend on what talents you can see with the people in front of you?
Nope. Every single session, I have some sort of playing with your feet scenario. Every single. It might be simple. It might be just we're doing 40 of these, receive it, switch it. Teaching younger kids just to really receive it and switch it on a good, fast-paced level.
Yeah.
And then we work into that common hitting now a 30-yarder just to your outside midfielder. But no, that's important.
It's a big part of the game, certainly over here. It's
if you look at every game, keepers touches, there's going to be a high percentage, about 82. One of my buddies just did a statistic on it. The coach, Todd Hofford at Real Salt Lake, he did a study. I think it's 82% on average is with your feet. 82% of touches.
Wow.
So if you don't work on that, it's going to be a tough struggle. So yeah, no, that's important. And it's important to show them the videos. You get the Edersons and the Ter Stegens, and you show some video of what these guys can do with their feet. That's the next level. I mean, within 5 years, everybody's going to be expected to do what those two can do. I think right now we want them to do what those two do, and I can name others too. There's more that are good with their feet. So yeah, it's a major part of goalkeeping. Also, at the same time, I think know when to do it. And, I think there's also, if you look, more and more keepers are getting caught trying to overplay out of the back.
Yes. Yes, we do.
Okay. I take it there was something that happened. Okay.
It's happening it's happened quite a few times at Derby. It's a transition of the way that we're trying to play under Philip Cocu. And yeah, we've been caught short once or twice this season. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a total team effort. And I actually did a video last week specifically on this. And what was interesting, it was with coaches. It was geared towards coaches. And I was trying to explain to them, it's one thing to say like, oh, I want your keeper to play like Neuer and keeper sweeper and blah, 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 right? You got to have a team that can do that. Ederson would not be as good as he is with his feet if his team doesn't open up and be comfortable on the ball.
Yeah.
And, so it is a team effort. So you can't just sit here and look at sometimes, let's say, the keeper and go like, oh, God. Well, I would show a clip and the coaches are like, all the keepers should have done this. I go, yeah, but let's rewind the clip. And then I pointed out 7 or 8 things wrong that the players didn't do to support the keeper.
Yeah.
They played it back and just stood there. If the player played it back and just opened up, the keeper could have just passed it out. Now he's got to take a dribble and launch it that way, and he gets caught. So it all starts with a whole team effort. And when you look at the keepers that are amazing with their feet, there is a common thread. Their team is amazing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You have to have the players around you to be able to do it.
Yeah, I would love to see Ederson with Raggedy Rovers play out of the back. You know what I mean? Like it's going to be a little different ball game. He's going to be launching that thing, 90 yards like he can.
So, Ian, the last question for me, and me and Jason talked about this, and I promised Jason that I wouldn't ask you this, but I feel
you can have anything. It's okay.
Alien versus Predator.
I knew we were going there.
How do you
actually
become how do you
hope-
become Predator?
Okay, I was secretly hoping. You never feel like I have a acting career, and it's
Okay.
laughable because, okay, for example, I'll be at a restaurant, and my wife and I'll be sitting at the bar, you know, eating, and you know, and there'll be a football game on, okay, and it might be West Ham versus Arsenal, let's say, and I'll just sit there, and some guy next to me will be like talking soccer, and be like, oh, you know, Arsenal, and it'd be and my wife's like, are you not gonna say anything like that you actually played for West Ham? And I'll be like, no, you know, like I'm humble on that side. But when it comes to my acting career, like because it's not an acting career, I actually love when I can talk about it because it's laughable. Like I'm not an actor. So how I became it, it was just kind of knowing some people. I coached through my academy. There was a goalkeeper I coached. And on this keeper's team, there was another player. And his dad was big up in this industry. So I met him one day at a game that I was watching this goalkeeper that I coached. He saw me, he walked over, and he's like, hey, Ian, just wanted to say, I know you're the keeper coach of this kid, Jordan. Just want to say what a great job you're doing. He's come such a long way. I was like, oh, thank you. And he's like, my name's Mike, and, you know, whatever. That was it. And then about a year and a half, 2 years later, I get a call from Mike, and he's like, hey, Ian, this is Mike. And I couldn't even remember really who he was at first because I only met him for 5 minutes. He's like, you know, have you ever seen the movie Predator with Schwarzenegger? I was like, of course, yeah. I mean, it's legendary. He goes, how would you like to play the Predator in the next movie? And literally my next question was, Mike, who the hell are you? Like, what do you do? You know, I had no idea. And he started laughing. He's like, oh, I'm like the senior producer, blah, blah, blah. He goes, the original Predator, who was English, legend, a guy named Ian, funny enough, he couldn't get his work permit or something, and they needed a Predator to do, you know, half of they only got halfway through the movie. So I was like, sure, man. He goes, you just got to go try the suit on, and if it fits, the job's yours. So I went and tried the suit on, and immediately when I tried it on, they were like, yes, this is the guy, you know, because I guess the other guy had really long legs but a short torso, and I have really long legs and a really long torso, so it kind of made it more, I guess, V cut, or so it looked even more dominating or something. And that was it, man. I did about 2 weeks of shooting, and it's just such a cool, crazy, funny story that you can bring up all the time at like a bar or a pub, and you know, because my wife always starts it. She's like, "Oh yeah, you know he's a Predator, right?" And they're like, "What?" And yeah, it was fun. It was hard work though, man. It was tough.
So so obviously we'll see you on the silver screen here soon, then, eh?
If you go, it's funny. If you go to YouTube and type in Alien vs. Predator soccer, just something, we did so what's really ironic is, so I go in first day of shooting, and the guy that does the alien, he's in a suit too. He's really famous, and he's done all the movies from, remember the original Alien back 1980 or something? He's done all the aliens, all the things. So he's famous. So I come in, and he's giving me pointers on how to be a predator. Like, you know, the Predator's very tall and strong, and, you know, this, and the alien's more creepy and down here and stuff. So he's giving me all these pointers on how to be, you know, what the Predator should be like. So I'm like, cool, whatever. So I do that. And then we shoot all the movie. And then about a month later, the director calls me up, and he goes, hey, we're doing a DVD commercial for the DVD release in England, okay? And he goes, because every movie we do like a funny spoof of the alien fighting with the Predator. So the first movie they did was, the commercial they did was Alien versus Predator playing poker together. And they're on the poker table across from each other, and the alien throws down like 4 aces, and the Predator's gun comes up, and the Predator just shoots the alien, and, you know, whatever. So they do a funny thing. And so the director, being no soccer knowledge whatsoever, he goes, yeah, we're going to do this DVD. We want to do soccer. And we're going to do, like, because we thought of you played soccer. He goes, and it's going to be shown during the FA Cup. I go, what? The FA Cup? I go, do you mean the FA Cup? Like that. And that was his knowledge of football. Like, He didn't know the FA Cup. Okay, so he called it the fuck up. So, anyways, and he goes, "Yeah, we're gonna play it during the FA Cup final." You know, so I was like, "Wow, this is coming full circle." So I go to do the commercial shoot now, and now the alien is in goal, and I'm taking a penalty kick on the alien. So the funny thing is, now I got the alien. I'm teaching him how to be a goalkeeper. So I'm like, okay, you know, so it was a pretty cool, like, full circle kind of thing. And if you look at, I can send you guys a link too, but if you just go on YouTube and type in, you know, Alien versus Predator soccer, you'll see the commercial.
And for our listeners, we'll put that on our Twitter page for our listeners to.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. Yeah, it's fun. And then my other acting thing was me and my buddy and I, we did the soccer and kicking and screaming with Will Ferrell. I don't know if you guys know that.
You were in the movie with Will Ferrell.
Yeah, we did. My buddy and I, we did all the soccer sequences. Yeah, and there was actually a couple moments. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't. No,
I have. I know what I'm watching tonight as well.
Okay, now when you go, there's two scenes. The very first soccer scene where Will's walking out with his kid. There was a coach that didn't show up for the shoot, and in the background you're going to see a coach in a blue jacket, and it's literally a split second. You'll miss it if you blink. That's me. And then the goalkeeper in goal when Pele shoots the ball in the stands. That's me.
And
it was just days.
Keep out for that.
What's that?
I'll make sure I will definitely have a look for that. And
it was just when someone didn't show up there, I just played a fill-in. But my buddy and I, we were there every day doing all the soccer. We choreographed all the soccer sequences and everything. So yeah, it was a little cheesy at times. Some of the sequences were a little bit Hollywood, but yeah, it was good. It's a fun movie to watch.
Yeah, I'll make sure I catch up with it. Well, Ian, thank you very much, so much for your time. It's been great to discuss and reminisce, and I wish you all the best for your future with everything that you do. And thank you very much.
I appreciate anytime. This was fun, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Ian, and hopefully if everything works out, we can have you on again in the future. But the insights you did are really awesome. I know Jason and myself have learned a lot, and thank you for being so open and communicative with me and setting this up. We really appreciate it. And world's a crazy place right now. So thank you for taking the time and being able to normalize it for us by just talking football.
Sure, man. Anytime. I love it. And cheers to all the Derby fans that supported me at my time. They were amazing for me. And it'd be great to get back.
Well, Jason, I think what we're going to do next year, if I'm right, we're going to get an Ian Feuer Derby County kit, correct? I think
yes, absolutely.
We're going to get your name printed on the back, so the royalties will come in for that one with the new kit.
I would have certainly have had the kit that you wore when you played for Derby. I've definitely got that in a box somewhere. Probably not with your name on it. It would have Poom's name on it somewhere. I've definitely got one in the attic somewhere.
I got mine hanging up on my wall in my office, so it's hanging up with a lot of pride.
Yeah. Lovely. Well,
from Prime Park, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, thank you very much. It's the end of the pod. It's been a fantastic interview. Looking forward to doing more of these. As always, Corey, thank you very much for your help.
Jason, you're welcome.
And again, final thanks to Ian. Ian, thank you very much, and good luck with everything in the future.
Anytime, guys. Appreciate it.